presentation. Thanks, Sebastian, and hello, everyone. As Sebastian already said, and I think we all feel like there's a lot is happening and a lot of topics have now come up that we didn't expect 3 or 4 years ago, and now they're very important to us. We are going through a transformation process also regarding AI, and preparing for Print Day, Jürgen and I had a chat and we looked at what we should talk about, and we thought maybe we want to give you some insight in our personal experiences. And let's look at Informatica, where I work as a product manager. Let's look at Informatica and how our roadmap changes and what issues prevail now in terms of software development, and on the other hand, how companies look at this topic, how they prepare, and how do they detect the things that might not be that obvious from a high-level point of view. So we're going to look at the future, but the most things we're going to discuss during our presentation are available already today. Some things we have completed the development of already. I'm going to give you a transparent insight. But before we look at the details, let's take a step back. AI is a buzzword. It's the great hype. We all know this. But there are some certain aspects that people hesitate to talk about, even software developer. A lot is possible, but we need to have some preconditions to apply AI in a company situation. So let's look at this figure, which Gartner came up with. In 2025, they already noticed that 60% of the AI projects will be terminated until 2026. And the main reason for that is the data, not the AI as such and the technology behind it, but the data that's required for the efficient use of AI and the lack thereof. At Informatica, we also do research. Every year we have 100 of chief data officers that receive a questionnaire. And from that questionnaire, I brought along an interesting figure, which is 76% of the respondents of the questionnaires told us that they personally think that governance rules and regulations that are required for AI processes can't keep up with the speed of the development. There are new technologies all the time. Claude has released something new. The departments noticed something that's important, and the rules and regulations are lagging behind. So this is a challenge in terms of up-to-date regulations. Another figure, 41% of the respondents said that the quality of the data still remains to be a challenge, and everyone here in our community knows about this and had experience. So sometimes you have wrong descriptions, wrong classifications, and product data PIM challenges. And last but not least, I think this is the most striking figure. 65% of the respondents said that they believe that most of their employees that are involved in AI processes trust the data. This is a very important factor, because what you believe the data to deliver and what the data actually is and represents, there is a huge gap, and this gap brings the projects to fail. And in theory, we had a good idea, but the implementation didn't work the way we expected. So at Informatica, we asked ourselves the question, what is required? And according to our conviction, context is the core aspect here to leave this gap behind. It's not about availability of the data. We all have huge amounts of data available, sometimes too many. Jürgen mentioned when we open the SharePoint, we have a huge amount of data already. No, this is not about availability. It's about the meaningfulness of the data and the usefulness of the data for AI to work with. Let me give you a specific example. I don't need to understand that the product has 47 attributes. What I need to understand is where do those attributes come from? Who put them in the system, and are they updated and maintained? So this is the trusted element of the context. It's about the data. The data that you receive from traders, from customers, for example. We need to know the history behind the data, the relationship, and also the traceability of the data. In theory, it sounds quite simple, but the implementation is much more complicated. So this is another figure I brought along. 61% believe it's simple to introduce projects when you have the right data. So let's talk about the problem before we see how the company Hoffmann tackles this challenge. So let's look at the challenge. The traditional challenge when you implement AI in your PIM, for example. I gained a lot of experience in this field. So if you set up a AI module in your PIM to serve enterprise processes, this comes along with some challenges. For example, the fragmented intelligence, which means maybe you ask the AI question or the AI works autonomously with my product data in PIM, but the AI does not have any insight in my ERP data or my data, customer data. So how can I expect the AI to deliver the right answers and to take the right decisions if the data is incomplete? It's just a precondition that we need. The other issue is the semantic ambiguity. Length in our ERP system might mean something completely different than in the channel feed. But if I have different length in the PIM or the ERP, how is the AI supposed to handle this? Then also architectural questions. If you want to integrate clouds, you need APIs, the right data, the right export processes for the data, processing of customer data. This is complicated. And last but not least, security and compliance is also an aspect. We all learn in the media all the time which information was released. We know about transparency requirements. We all know about the EU AI Act. That is something we need to adhere to. And sometimes it might be a little bit complicated and overwhelming for companies. So these are the 4 aspects that pose challenges. And because of this, it's not really that easy to start. And I just wanted to point out what makes it difficult. So now I'd like to hand over to Jürgen, and Jürgen will explain how the Hoffmann tackles these challenges and what practical experience and knowledge they gained. You probably won't be surprised to hear that simultaneously to the development of our priint system, we set up a completely new data structure, which is now a development over the course of 10 years. When we started in 2012 to set up a new printing system, you already heard in our keynote that we started very small, focusing on the catalog. So it wasn't just the printing process, but also the data situation. And the data we worked with previously was only the catalog. The way you have to imagine this, we set up a PIM system, and from today's point of view, it was a little bit like a village where the first new larger buildings were constructed. So it was a very simple concept. We looked at the existing properties and everything else was taken care of by the developers. So we didn't really have any broader view for the future. We didn't have a supplier portal. We didn't have a DQ application. We were happy that we had everything in the box, if you want to call it like this, that we could use it, that we could publish a catalog, that we could serve the electronic catalogs, and that kept us busy enough. And not everything was bad, to be honest, but it was very simple and we had a very limited environment. So what happened then? It was really a little bit bending the straight path. So every little issue, every little item, we moved from the left to the right. We fiddled around just to make sure that we did everything that was required. And I would never, ever again take this approach. If it was up to me, I would just build a straight motorway. But the reality is different. And we did the mistake that we didn't prioritize in the past. And from today's point of view, it's unbelievable how we approach this. We just worked according to the motto, we need this, that, and everything needs to be integrated in the catalog. And it was okay. We published our catalog and we even received an award from Horst for our last catalog. We only have 2 awards now. But this is exactly what it's all about. So where do we want to arrive in the future? And for that, we broke down our structures and we decided to integrate our supplier portal. We decided to do the EQ. And it's like blacklist terms. So as traders of tools, for example, we need to be very specified about our products. So it's very basic issues such as looking outside the box, leaving the village behind, and looking around the corner. So what's our goal? We need to see what is existing already. We do have the data available. We have a system in place and we were able to work with this, but we wanted to make it scalable. As I said, we needed to look outside the box. And the next step was finding the truth about where to find product data. Yes, of course, the product data was available in PIM, but in our company, we also have data in SAP. That's also a truth level. Then we have safety data sheet, which are not in the DAM system. So we need to start again at the beginning. And here you can see how you have to take this step by step to find out what your goal is. And in the past, we only looked at data project-based and not as a foundation for the strategy. The data was available. And you all have data available. But this holistic approach was missing in the past. Everyone was happy in their own bubble and satisfied if and when everything worked in their bubble, and they didn't look to their neighboring departments. That was the sad truth. Then we engaged in the next step, the next process step, which was the architectural approach, and we looked at how the data interacts, which interdependencies exist between the data, and it was very basic when we started. Then we looked at the question whether a new classification system was required for the automation, whether we needed to have an improved display in the shop and the catalogs to make it easier to compare. And we wanted to display more data in a better quality way. You said, Micha, 15 to 40 attributes, so added information that is beneficial for the customer and enables the customer to better locate products and specifications. And then we slowly took this step by step. We now had the new classification system. And let me look at the layout information. And here we arrived in the Valley of Tears. Somebody on their own with no clue where to go. That might be Eva. And Eva says, where's my data? I can't set up my layout information. And Andreas, please deliver the data. And Andreas says, we don't look at individual cases any longer. We check the data, why it's wrong, and we don't work on the data. So it's not about the individual case, the individual data, but the broader spectrum. And layout is only one example for this approach. Then another issue we looked at, and from today's point of view, in hindsight, we can say it's very lucky that we started looking at governance. We need to see how can we handle data, how can we deal with data, not just upon request, but we need to have a constant exchange across departments and not work in our bubbles. You all have heard these terms, governance and so on. But you need to have the courage, as we said yesterday, the courage to take the first step. Another important thing at Hoffmann were duplications. In our most important customers, in our key accounts, 10% of our most important customers show most of the duplications. We've got customer entries at Hoffmann that are duplicated hundreds of times. Why is that the case? Because 25 years ago, we used processes that cannot be used today any longer, and you can't put the finger at anyone. This is what was the right decision in the past. But today, we have to live with this. And in the product area, it's very similar. Of course, we have external data that we set up internally, lots of duplications based on pricing structures and so on. We're all creative people, but our creativity does not always benefit our projects. And what could use dashboards. We set up loads of dashboards and lots of data, and that gives us then insight that some data might be defect. But does that improve the data? I'm not quite sure. And if you have a pupil in school who understands that he's not a good pupil, then that doesn't automatically motivate him or her to become a better student. And then finally, we were at the point where we could build our city, our Hoffmann data city. So we sat together with the Hoffmann management team, and we came up. We've got logistics city at Hoffmann, and the head of the logistics city said, "We already have our logistics city. We don't want a data city." But this is exactly what it's all about. Even if we have 5 cities, we do need the structures. We need the correlation, the interdependencies. And here you can see something is happening at Hoffmann. We are moving things ahead. And we then introduced our MDM, our multi-domain application. We looked at what exactly needs to be done. And for that, we brought people from different departments together, some of our employees who didn't even know each other. And with that, we moved forward step by step. We set up rules and regulations, and also this whole issue of government. It's very important to consider that this happens both ways, top down. So we had our management on board, but everyone else needs to be on board. And the employee said, oh, finally something is happening. So the need and the requirement existed, but middle management didn't really find a way to tackle it. And from my point of view, I think it can be said that this was a game changer for our team. So an additional level we talked about yesterday already. A few years ago, Hoffmann was acquired by SAS, but we still have our own autonomy as a large trader and a large sales organization. But at the moment, we are merging the IT department of SFS and Hoffmann. And some things don't exist at SFS or have a different focus than our Hoffmann IT. And that isn't necessarily a disadvantage, but the way we approach data now cannot only focus on Hoffmann any longer, but we need to expand this to the entire SFS organization. So we have to adapt to the new size of the organization, and that requires a lot of effort. So let's look at the results. So our golden records include topics where we understand our mistakes, where we understand our duplications and what we need to improve. And on the one hand, we want to work with DQ to improve our current data situation. But what's even more important, we want to avoid that new low-quality data is generated. So we need to shut the door and make sure that we don't let any low-quality data in. So I always take the Cinderella approach. We take the good things and leave the bad things behind. And with that, we set up the right structures. And to be honest, at that time, we weren't even aware what impact this approach would have on the whole organization. We started in 2019, and everyone was really thinking it was funny, the approach I took. They thought I was hallucinating. But the whole issue of duplications, nobody really cared about. Nobody was bothered and quite happy to just simply accept it. So what's today's situation? Let me give you an AI example. The order automation. The way it works at the moment, we have a post box, and in this post box, everything is collected that is not permitted. We have customers who don't use our order system, and if you're in a little village where you don't have a post box, then customers send an email. So we get lots of customer emails, and thankfully the customer says what products they want and how many of the products they want, but not the article number. So thankfully we have AI now, and they look for the data. But now the question is, who validates the data? We talked about the human in the loop yesterday, and of course, we are still the human in the loop, but what's going to happen in the future? We want this process to be automated. And how do we get the AI to find the right customer? It's still difficult for the AI to find out. But let's look at the data quality and the duplications, and this interplay of these systems will enable AI to take the next steps to drive forward the automation process and to actively, effectively use the agents. And this is exactly what we want to achieve. We want to be the data to be the effective pillar, the right basis for AI, the good Cinderella grains in the right pot. This is exactly the data we want to keep. So in summary, we can say we have set up systems, system technology 10%, processes 20%, but the human remains the most important factor at 70% in the process. And if we're completely honest, the core question is, what do we want to automate? You cannot just automate something that you're not in control of. Stefan, over to you.
Well, thank you, Jürgen. It's such a fitting metaphor. The train is running, yeah, by the way. The processes, the transformation chains, this is classics. With a PIN project, starts with a tough core, and then you actually integrate further data domains, and then proves fruitful in the end. But that's the same principle applied to AI. What are we talking about? We're talking about autonomous systems that will autonomously handle tasks, and they will have the same questions and problems. And this is why I think it's so great that across the historical development, you have installed such a fantastic milestone. And you have an advantage over other competitors. You beautifully said you cannot automate what you do not have control over. And let me endorse this. Let me briefly show. We talked about trusted context. We talked about the challenges for companies. So what is the right supporting platform that you ideally use for this? Well, at Informatica, it was perfectly clear. When we worked on a cloud-native platform, NDM and PIM need to be thought in one thought, and that the platform that we make available in the cloud for our customers actually covers both topics. We didn't do so to have the shortest time to market, which would have been a nice side effect. No, we did it because we really think that this is the only architecture to provide the right structures for the future. In other words, various things work the same across all the various processes. We have a unified source of truth, one record in all of the systems. The speed for the product launch, of course, we try to do as much as possible in a collaborative fashion. And if you do not only focus on the finished products, but also the material data and the supply chains, then it is, of course, a competitive edge. Revenue conversion, more sales, relationships, understanding what are upsell products, what are cross-selling products, which customers buy what, and then the synchronization as part of the platform. And we said it before, the whole complex of proactive compliance. This should be part of an integral part of the architecture, not follow downstream. When you look at this from the product side, then of course you will read IDMC, Intelligent Data Management Cloud, very often. So there's one platform for our customers that actually does everything. And this also contains the MDM, PIM platforms, and there are 5 aspects really key be the multi-domain characteristic. The product data do not live in isolation. They need to be seen within the context of the other data domains. Then master data governance. Each record has an origin that should be traceable. We should be able to understand why values come from one source system and taken over by another source system. Then for the AI outputs. Then we have pre-built business apps. This is to make sure you don't start with a blank canvas, so you can pick customer data, product data from a menu, probably supplier data, and then you get a data model that's pre-built, and the layouts can, of course, be designed. Then the Informatica extensions, this is on top. Saying I'm in retail, for instance, then I can add to some pre-built assets. Then the most important thing within the context of this lecture is the CLAIR internal platform. And it's important to understand, luckily because of the architecture we've selected, with a lot of foresight. It's not a layered, a featured layer, but it's one backbone across the whole architecture. And you just pick and select the right functionalities. And this is a big benefit. Then Product 360, this is what it looks like. This is the app for the product data, so to speak. And it is important to have reliable data and correlate them with the other data I have available in the company. And as you can see by yourselves, there are hosts of possibilities. And those who are more familiar with our product portfolio will probably know that we had to start with one thing, and this is why the central master data management was the first step of evolution. This is quite a while ago, in 2022. This kept us busy. Now we're busy to introduce more and more PIM functionalities. And now we see the right drive because we have the right platform. What is available for customers as of this year? Classical topics also had to be catered to, not only the dynamic fields, dynamic integration of images, but also line breaks, for instance, or the clear code, and the conversion that is enabled within the software, and the navigation, and the feedback. Then things that you can still request if somebody is or were interested. Some use our software, and we talked about this. There's an early adopter program where certain functionalities are made available a little earlier, including an agent, and I will talk about this a little later. Editing charts, the certain workflow editing functionalities, and there's a host of other things that we're adding. So maybe also to show we will continue developing software, and there will be people logging in, looking at this, and forming part of the process, and this should not be neglected. But to actually link this all and connect this all, because some of you were at this summit, we do a lot of research with our customers and our partners, and some of the partners and some were here as partners. Hoffmann, for instance, was also involved in the various sessions where we wanted to know what PIM and agentic AI mean to you. It makes no sense to tell you what we think about it. This is classical product management. You're basically familiar with this, but you should be hit the tempo of the time and exchange with partners to see the emerging potential. To conclude, let me show you this. How does the product support in concrete terms? And I've selected 3 important basics. And on the one hand, it's a lot about matching, redundant data. Precise matching is, of course, ideal, but at times it's not that easy. And then AI really helps me to map some matching workflows. I've brought parts along from our software, but the technology is not so important, how we do AI matching, but the reproducibility, the traceability is important. If I do just some sort of matching, then you end up with the result. Then you may trust it or not confide it. And one important step in development was to make this reliability available to the business user. A year ago, this was not possible yet. Since summer last year, this has been available, and you can scroll through and look at heat maps, which systems do have a lot of redundant data, so you make it traceable. And for reasons of time, I'll speed up. The next thing resulting from this is how we create the master data governance for this matching. The point here is, above all, well, data governance is not very popular. It sounds like additional work. It sounds like slowing down processes. Well, in the times we're living, it's not about breaking, but speeding up processes. This is what you need to be fast. Of course, it costs me some time to prepare high quality data. It pays off at the end of the day. If the return on invest does not come and your users don't adapt this, how do you go from there if you build on poor data? So this is a more detailed view for the master record updates overview. So the matching has been done. Now I have the various source systems, Oracle, SAP, Workday, or Salesforce, for instance, and they all contribute to this one golden record. And it would be important to understand, to define rules and say, well, the product description coming from my ERP system is probably not the #1 description. Maybe my product managers or the PLM software is more decisive. And here you can see how this is the co-pilot, for instance, where you can ask, well, I would like to know from the master data what is the first and middle, etc. So govern it as a feature, not as a burden. And if you have this structure, then you can talk about an agentic product experience. This is what we did with the user group. We now have 5 agentic skills that we can apply within the PIM context. Discovery and exploration. I simply ask, what do my data structures look like? Where are the links? Or data quality, where I am no longer the expert for creating rules at Informatica. I simply have to prompt the GPT. What's the problem I want to clarify? And in natural language, I get the rules. Then product experience, I will show this to conclude. Then the help agent, this is a no-brainer. I'm new, I have a new team. Why not allow him to ask certain questions? And data integration in order to use conversation to create a mapping logic for imports and exports. Since we're left with very little time, I would like to focus on the product experience agent. And I brought along a brief video. Status quo is I have an incomplete record and I want to complete this record. there was a normal product fact sheet, not PIM to print, but print to PIM. And I can interact with the Copilot now. The record is not complete yet. Can you help me to complete it? And then I use the fact sheet as a basis. Then I submitted it to the product agent. So PDF processing, parsing, automated mapping of the attributes in the sheet to my own data model, and then I apply the values of the version that we now have, which went online in April. Now we add a classification. Those who looked at classification before GenAI will know that this was really manual training of processes. And manual training was necessary to get okay results. Training is no longer needed. You just have to know the metadata. And you quickly see that complete data sets are issued. This was the status quo of April. We're now busy introducing the next layer, making the web available, the relation between the different data and the transcription generation. This is all involved now. There's also an API to do your own things. And this is a private preview. If you want to look at it at leisure, please approach us. And from July, from summer, it will be available for all customers. And it's going to be important, an important aspect to understand PIM in the application. There's still a human in the loop. The aim is, of course, to become even more automated and autonomous. But I want the feedback from the customers first to see where the problems lie, to improve, and to avoid the human in the loop at the end of the day, if possible. And autonomy is then, of course, the most important target towards the end of the year. This was our track record over the past 5 years. We're very happy the way it has gone so far. We're excited to see where we're at next. Jürgen, the last famous words. We've accompanied this process. We have only boarded this platform now, for other reasons, of course, because of capacity and resources reasons, but we're also involved in this, and I look forward to leveraging these skills which we did not have available in the current solution. It's going to be exciting, and there are interesting times ahead of us. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe as a summary to conclude the take-home message, those wanting to win with AI, I'm pretty confident. You do not have to be the fastest in adapting, but you will have to make sure that your data is AI ready. This is an important aspect. And as you comply with this, we have brilliant times ahead. I would like to thank you, Jürgen, and all of you. And have a nice remainder of the day. Now, there's only been a slight delay. We would have some more time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, always at the back or at the faraway sides. Hi, I have a question. We learned that it is not due to the systems. We have the technology. You described it so well. There is the middle management is missing. How did you solve this problem? Is there a new department or no? It's a question of the mindset. It sounds strange, but just do it. Be brave enough to do it. Yes, I am, of course, the one wearing the hat. A breakfast, lunch are the most important meeting points during the day. It is speaking, convincing, of highlighting the benefits. Of course, there are also drawbacks. Flo said, well, just leave it away. Yes, there is this change, but you have to live the change. The best system is no good use if it's not being used. As big as it may be, people have to accept the change, actively embrace the change, not individual people. You need people, more people to join in. My old department, they supported everything. They said, Jürgen, go for it, do it. But this is also like a confirmation, an endorsement. And yes, it's also an important confirmation if the management joins in. If the management does not adopt it, forget it. It's a question of mindset. Yeah, I would like to add, it's always important to be able to show a return on invest. It's so difficult to say, well, our data is all stupid. And if you look ahead of time, and this was the idea of this lecture, if you think ahead of time, you see a completely new field. And this is why we need to attack this now, address this now. This is so easy to explain, to tell people that the quality of data is important. No, it's not a means in itself, in its own end. I have a question. I entered too late, a few minutes late, sorry. We supply, we're a manufacturer of tools. We submit product data to the S3 database. How does this link to your topic? For us personally, yeah. Well, with us, the content department, through our in-house investment, is able to do just this, AI-assisted, adapted to the Hoffmann products and cases. And in this way, we basically generate our structure, our content, and gradually build this system and expand it to fit the necessities. We discussed whether we should actually opt for a third party or in-house, and we finally opted for in-house.